Hey, I'm Shauna Faye, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use face paint stencils. I have a bunch of tips on how to stencil. I'm going to do a few demonstrations, and I'm going to show you the best materials to use so that you can be successful with your stenciling. Let's get started. Also, feel free to subscribe to my channel. So real quick, let's go over some materials. First, you're gonna need a reusable stencil. I recommend the ones that are made out of Mylar. You can buy them at most face paint shops. I'll have some linked in the description down below. I recommend using those ones because they're specifically made to work with water-based paint. Here are some of my go-to stencils that I use on the job every single time. Animal print, dots, silhouettes, stars. I actually use these stencils every single time I face paint. You'll also need some sponges, and there's a few different kinds. Wooden daubers are easiest to use because they have so much material, and all that extra material helps to soak up excess water. They also come in multiple sizes, which is great. The only downfall I found is that they aren't very durable and they fall apart after some use. Finger daubers are most commonly used. You can put them on your finger and apply them, which is pretty handy. I like them because they're pretty durable, but they do only come in one size. You can also use a regular face paint sponge. I like these for some stenciling because they're double-sided, which can come in handy for some stencil designs. Regular face paint sponges aren't as dense as daubers, which can make them trickier to stencil with unless you know the right technique, and I'm going to show you that technique. Let's do some designs using all three sponges and some of my favorite stencils that I like to use on the job. First, I'm going to use a wooden dauber. I'm going to show you guys how to load that. The trick to stenciling is to use the right amount of water. Too much water and your stencil is going to bleed. To get the right amount of water, I use a spray bottle like this one. With this type of spray bottle, you can either get a mist or a more concentrated amount of water depending on how you pull the trigger. You want to just go really fast with it. If you go slow, it's going to give you like a dribble of water. So we're going for a mist. So I'm going to mist my paint once, and I'm going to start to press the dauber into the paint until all of the moisture is absorbed. I'm using quite a bit of pressure, and I'm really pushing and twisting to work that paint into the dauber. And now my biggest tip for stenciling is to check the consistency. So I'm going to do that here on my hand. So this is what one spray looks like. It could work, but it's a little bit dry. So I'm going to mist my paint one more time. And once again, pressing and twisting into the paint. I know it's ready when the dauber no longer slips and slides in the paint, and it actually slightly sticks to the paint like this. This is the perfect consistency. It should be slightly opaque with some visible pores showing, like you can see right here. Now that our dauber is perfectly loaded, let's go ahead and do our first design. We're gonna do a cute fairy design using a little fairy silhouette. I'm starting off by applying a nice bright rainbow using a split cake and a 3/4 brush. So first we want our paint to dry before we put the stencil on top, otherwise it will transfer to the stencil. If your paint isn't dry, then you can do that really quick by just using a regular face paint sponge, and you can just absorb any extra moisture. So we're gonna position our stencil, and then we're gonna hold it down firmly. And I like to hold it down with 2 fingers like this, and I can always like pivot my fingers to make space for the sponge. And a little tip, if a kid starts leaning back because you're gonna be pressing firmly, you can actually tell them, don't let me push you, or tell them to push back at you. That usually works for me. So I'm gonna just start going, and you can either do pouncing motions like this, or you can actually drag the sponge a little bit. Either way. All right, there we go. Now before the paint dries, I'm gonna add a little bit of glitter. This is just a green glitter. Now you can leave it like this for a super fast design. I usually like to add a little bit of line work using white. And here's our cute and super fast fairy design. So now let's do a Superman design using a 2-part stencil. For this, I like to use a regular face painting sponge because I can use both sides. To load a regular sponge, we're gonna do the same process as we did the wooden dauber. It's a little trickier to use one of these sponges for stenciling because it's a little less dense than a dauber is, but you can do that. The key is to build up your consistency, and once again, you're gonna be checking your consistency on the back of your hand. That is the most important step. So I'm going to start with the first part of the Superman logo. And I'm going to put that right here in the center of my face. And just, this is pretty easy because there's not a lot of details, it's just one big shape. But you just want to be a little bit careful around the corners. And with the regular face paint sponge, I just try not to press too hard. And there we go. So now that we have the first part of our stencil down, I actually like to take the side I haven't loaded yet and just dry the paint. That way I can go right over with the second part of the stencil. So I'm just gonna line that up as best as I can right on top of that base. And I'm actually gonna swipe just like that. Before I take the stencil away, I'm going to add some glitter, and I want that to stay within the lines. So I'm just going to hold the stencil there. This is a lot easier to do on someone else.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
And I can just remove that with a sponge. To make this into a design, I like to add a blue split cake on either side. I also like to take just the edge of my brush and do a quick outline around the whole symbol. And I'm just making it a little more even, a little more symmetrical. And to finish it off, I'm going to use a dot stencil. Here's our fun little Superman design all finished using just a few stencils and a split cake. The last technique I'd like to show you is how to feather out your stencil design. I kind of did that a little bit here. So for that, we're going to do a cheetah design, and we're going to feather out the cheetah spots. First, I'm putting down some white for the muzzle and ears, and then I'm using a homemade neon rainbow cake. I actually have not been able to find a rainbow cake that's this bright since Leanne stopped making neons. So if you know of any brands that make an awesome rainbow like this, please let me know. Now that the base is done, we can load up our sponge, and this time I'm going to use a finger dauber. And you guys already know the drill by now. Once again, we're building up the paint by spraying it once and checking it, and then going back and spraying it again if it needs more. I do recommend doing this method until you're more comfortable stenciling. With experience, you'll know just how much water to add right off the bat, but this is kind of my foolproof method for people who are really struggling with stencils. So I'm going to position this stencil pointing up actually towards the main focal point, which is in between the eyes. So just like that. I'm going to start by putting a bit of pressure here. And then as I come in towards the eye, I'm gonna kind of release a little bit of pressure to get a more faded effect. And I'm gonna do that on the other side. And I'm gonna add a little bit more right in here. Just fading it down lightly. Just like that. The stenciling is all done, and now I'm just going to add the nose and the muzzle and outline the whole design. So what I'm doing now is I'm adding a pop of color into the middle of each cheetah spot. And while the paint is still wet, I'm gonna immediately poof on some colorful glitter right on top. For this technique, I find it helpful to keep the poofer bottle in my hand or really close by so that as soon as I put the color down, I can poof right on top. Putting on some sparkly lipstick. And here we have our super vibrant cheetah design. And I don't know about you, but these colors just give me like so much serotonin. So satisfying. And we're all done. Those are the basics of stenciling. If you like this video, then hit that like button. It really helps out my channel. And if you want to see more videos like this, then feel free to subscribe and check out my other videos. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.